Hi everyone, I hope you've been enjoying the 30-day inclusion challenge so far. This is day 4 of Involves LGBT Plus Week. Today we're talking to one of our previous outstanding role models, Jo Walker from Royal London, and we will be discussing bi-erasure. So hi Jo, how are you?
Hello, I'm good, thank you. How are you?
Good, yeah, I'm looking forward to this session.
Yeah, me too.
Amazing. So yeah, let's get started. Bisexuality is the fastest growing facet of the LGBT plus community. With the sexuality spectrum growing wider and social stigmas gradually breaking down, people are allowing themselves to explore their sexuality beyond binary terms like gay and lesbian. Why then do you think, as a society, we're still so prone to erasing bisexuality?
Good question. I think there are a number of reasons, and certainly, if we think about what bi-erasure or bisexual erasure is, it's the silencing or the removal of that identity. It's the denial that identity exists or is valid, and I think that happens in a number of ways that have been sort of compounded over years of erasure, actually. And I think it often occurs through people assuming that bisexuality is just a phase. And that comes up a lot when you're talking about bi people, and when people talk about their experiences of being bi. I think they talk a lot about that people often think it's just a phase, and that I think often bi people have to sort of prove themselves to be real, and you have to, I don't know, do your time. I know certainly I experience that less now because I've been out for a long time. But I remember when I first came out when I was 15 to a friend at school. That was definitely, I was told, oh, it's just a phase, or it's just attention seeking, that it's not something that's long term, that it's it's just something that's a short term, it's a stopgap. And I think that that's really, really common and is still common. And I think the language that we use as well really erases by identities. You're in a straight relationship now, and it's like, well, no, I'm not in a straight relationship, I'm bi. And I've certainly experienced that when I've been in a relationship with someone of a different gender, and people refer to it as a straight relationship, and just that language in itself erases my identity, because I'm still bi when I'm in a straight relationship. I mean, I guess also there's like, people talk about passing as straight a lot, and sort of as if that's like an easier thing to do, or an easy thing to do. And certainly I've definitely in the past, when I've not been out at work and been in a relationship with a man, I've allowed myself to pass as straight. But actually that's extremely damaging as a bi person, because that's me erasing myself. That's erasing my own identity. And I think that is a common sort of misconception, certainly within the LGBT plus community, that bi people have it easier because they can pass as straight. But actually it's not, it doesn't work like that. And more often what it means is that we have to come out so much more, because people make assumptions that we're straight or gay or lesbian when actually we're bi. And so you have to, people often say to me, you're always talking about being bi. And it's like, well, yeah, because I have to, because otherwise you'll assume I'm something I'm not. And I don't want that to be the case anymore. And I feel comfortable, I'm lucky enough to feel comfortable enough to do that. But not all bi people do feel that comfortable, and so will sort of pass as straight. And that's not a privilege. I think often it's thought of as a privilege, and it really isn't. It's a burden.
Yeah, I think, yeah, you touched on something really interesting that I guess I definitely don't take into account a lot, where this idea of coming out in itself is quite a toll, and having to kind of do it repeatedly, I'm sure, definitely takes its toll. But yeah.
Yeah, it does. And I think that So for example, I was talking to a gay colleague few years ago, and they were like, oh, it's just really easy, I just mention my husband and people know. And I'm like, well, that's great for you, but if I had a husband and I mentioned my husband, they would assume I'm straight. If I had a wife, they'd assume I was a lesbian. So I can't just use sort of skirting around the issue language to let people know who I am. I have to say I am bi. And I come out every week like that. That is, if I'm meeting someone new, they will ask me about, when you have that kind of rapport building conversation, which is so important, especially in the workplace, they will make assumptions. And so I can either sort of keep that quiet and then feel really uncomfortable and feel a bit of a weight on my shoulders that I need to then keep up that assumption that they've made. Or what I do now is I put it into the conversation really early on. And I mean, one of the easiest ways for me to do that is because I'm so heavily involved in sort of flying the flag for bi people and involved in LGBT plus networks, and what the work that involved do, and that really helps because I can just use that as a kind of a stepping stone to make sure that they know who I am.
No, so that's really interesting. So you touched on sort of a lot of misconceptions, and I guess my follow-up is, what can people do? How can people help debunk those misconceptions? How can we stop erasing bisexuality?
And I think, that assumption, making those assumptions, bringing it into the conscious, that although someone might talk about a boyfriend or a girlfriend or a husband or a wife, that doesn't automatically demonstrate their sexual orientation. And so, we talk a lot about unconscious bias, and I think bringing that into the conscious, that actually, I know that I would normally assume that they are straight or they are gay or lesbian. Actually, they might not be. And so allowing that to sort of pass over you so that and that you haven't made that assumption, because I think that is really damaging, because then you might say something like, refer to gay things, and it's like, oh, no, that's not quite right. And one of the sort of common sort of myths around bisexual people, particularly I think bisexual women, is that we're promiscuous, or that we're unreliable, or we're likely to cheat, or and there's this real over sexualization of bi women, and I think that that media doesn't help with that. There are so many examples of that. I think is it a Rihanna song where she talks about getting drunk and kissing girls, as if like that's what you have to do to, that's what bisexuality is that, I have relationships with men, but I kiss women when I'm drunk, and things like that, or that we're not to be trusted, that you have to, that if I'm in a relationship with a man, that that I might cheat with a woman, and certainly there really is that misconception about bi people really in the community as well. I've been on online dating apps and started chatting to a woman who's a lesbian, and at the moment they find out you're bi, I'd say 90% of the time they say, oh, sorry, I don't date bi women. Right. And just that alone is just completely invalidating my identity and making an assumption that I'm not to be trusted, or that I'm going to suddenly run off with a man. And I think that is, again, it's just that's really damaging. And I would say to people who are lesbian, who identify as lesbian or gay, that trust us with there are lots of people who can cheat, right? And it's not just bi people. And I think that is definitely that we're not gay enough, we're not queer enough. You're in a relationship with someone with the opposite sex, so you're straight now, and when that happens, you're made to sort of feel like any credibility of your queerness is completely washed away simply by being in a relationship with someone of the opposite sex. And so I think that there's lots that can be done actually within the community to stop that. I think that is just something I continuously come across, and then I think, interestingly, for bisexual men, there are completely different challenges actually. I think it's much less accepted generally, and gay with one foot in the closet is really common. I've got a bi-male friend who just is constantly, being told, like people have said to me, yeah, but he's gay, isn't he? Bless him. And it's like, no, he's bisexual. And I think because there are all these stereotypes, particularly around gay men, of this sort of campness, I guess. And so if they sort of present maybe in a camp way, that they're definitely gay, and that's not true. And we have to really work hard to debunk that myth, because it is a myth, and it's not that phase that that is so often talked about, that that it's a stepping stone on the way to coming out as gay or lesbian. And for some people it might be. Sexuality is fluid. I think we're almost coming more to terms with that, in the sense of gender, that gender is fluid, but actually sexuality can be fluid too. And I think that if someone comes out as bi and then a couple of years later they come out as gay, it's not that they weren't bi when they said they were bi. Like, that I think it's the idea that you have to choose one thing and that's you forever. That's not okay. And that, again, that can be really painful for people. People's mental health is, there are Stonewall stats, I think, around how much worse bi people's mental health is than their lesbian and gay people. And I think that is because of bi-erasure. That is because of those myths. And I think that there is so much more to be done, and that everyone can help to stop that. Like just accepting people for who they are, and when talking about things, don't just say use terms like, oh, the gays, because that, or when you're making examples. So often when people give an example of LGBT plus experiences or challenges or phobia, they'll often they'll give a gay example and they'll give a trans example, and so I think when you're thinking about examples, and organizations can do this when they're using examples, use bi examples too, and say bi. That is really important. And I know that there's so much terminology, and I think people can get really sort of tripped up and caught up in the terminology. And I think it's wonderful that, people are finding new ways to identify themselves, and that the terminology is growing. And I think bi has become an umbrella term for attraction to beyond the gender, to one gender. And, there's pansexual, biromantic, heteroflexible, homoflexible. There are loads of terms, and some people interchange between those terms, and that's totally okay. And just if someone offers you that term, then just use it. Yes.
I've learned so much today. Thank you for sitting down with me. I hope everyone listening and watching and registered for the program have learned a lot too. You'll see that we've put together a short workbook for you. So write down some of your biggest takeaways from Jo, like 3 of the things that you didn't know, and you didn't even think to think, like I do a lot of the times. There's a short list of resources, podcasts, films, books. Feel free to check them out, and commit to a goal. Commit to how you are going to stop erasing bisexuality, whether that's you, whether that's your organization. But yeah, thanks for joining us.